now we have the Beach
The fact
Boys
you found that shit on
Pet
vinyl.
Sounds.
Here
Yeah,
we
man.
go.
Yeah, and this album, basically, when Brian Wilson heard Beatles' Rubber Soul, he was like, he got super obsessive, like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna blow that out of the water.
Yep.
And then he
kind
Pet
of
Sounds.
did. I mean,
Yeah.
depending on what you believe, like, but it was an ongoing thing because then they did Sgt. Pepper's and he did Smile and lost his mind.
Yeah.
And lost his mind. That record just dropped like a few years ago.
Right. It literally did. It took him 50 years to finish that shit.
Actually,
Just to
That shit
show
is-
you how shook he was.
The
like,
original Detox. Like,
Right.
he
Smile.
Yeah.
I want to read this selection from Q Point actually, and this is Charles J. Moss did a thing about Revolver and you know Brian Wilson and Beach
Yeah.
Boys and Beatles and listen to what he wrote. He says, in 1966, neared its end, the group began work on Strawberry Fields Forever, a song written by Lennon that would guide the band's musical direction in the coming year. In 1967, when Brian Wilson first heard the song, he pulled over his car, broke down in tears, and said, "They got there first."
Aw.
Then, later that year, after hearing the Beatles' next album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, he had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Damn.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like, but how real is that?
Yeah.
That somebody with his talent
Yeah.
Right.
Can hear that.
can
and be
still
like,
be like
Right.
trumped in his mind or even in the
Don't say
minds of
Trump.
others.
Don't say Trump.
My bad. My bad.
All right, yeah.
Let's say Trump.
My bad.
We just got to take that
We
word
can
out
just
of our
cut that out. Edit that out. But and I could have picked literally each and every track on this album.
What was your cut again?
I chose I Just Wasn't Made for These Times.
Yeah.
It is it's a lot of this record, man, is really in terms of sound and instrumentation.
Yeah.
And just how he formed the three-dimensional image of the sound, knowing that he was actually deaf in one ear and couldn't really hear everything going on the way that he really did. But he was one of the first to use electric bass and acoustic bass at the same time.
Yeah.
He would have 4 or 5 guitarists do the same riff in unison. He would have crazy percussion
Right.
instruments. And this is in the time where you can't load the plug-in.
Right.
And you have all this, like, he needed people.
And you had a
And
limited number of tracks too.
Right.
Like it wasn't like you had, crazy amount of tracks.
And so
to get
this
all
is in the
stuff down.
time where they had the Wrecking Crew in L.A., which was the group of musicians. This is not really the Beach Boys. It's Brian Wilson and the Wrecking Crew and the Beach Boys singing. Because at that time, the Beach Boys no longer played on their own records. 'Cause
Right.
Brian wanted more and more and more. And so this is 20, 25 people playing. And I think this is as perfect as an album. Like, if you want to talk about a perfect album, I don't think they get more perfect than this, man. Like, just the vision, the lyrics. I think he's called it like a teenage symphony or something like that, if I recall properly. But it's kind of very angsty. The record.
Right.
A lot of just like even this track, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times.
Right. No, that encapsulates the entire concept of the whole what he was going through.
Yeah.
And like his whole creative process at that time, because even what the Beach Boys were doing prior was Surfing USA and all these like kind of cheesy California Girls type records.
Yep.
So when this came along, like that was a statement that he's
it's
saying.
another
like,
record that people weren't, like his own band members weren't fucking with it.
Right.
Like Mike Love, famously, he's the tall,
The lead singer.
He famously just hated the
Right.
record, hated everything about it because he thought it was like a lot of hippie bullshit.
Right, right.
Yeah.
He didn't understand the lyrics. And
Right.
He wasn't feeling it. He wanted more like "Help Me, Rhonda."
Right,
and
right.
Immediate.
Surfing
Yeah,
USA.
because that
Yeah.
was money, in the bank, and
Right.
Tommy
it
Boy
didn't
wanted
really even
another
sell
Say No.
as well when it came out.
Yeah. But then it went. Actually, Rolling Stone calls this the #2 album of all time.
What is the number one?
I don't actually remember, but I do remember this is #2. So it's pretty amazing though, because a lot of times
number one. Now I'm curious.
I think
what
it
Yeah.
was
like Nevermind or
the
something.
beat Revolver.
it might be Revolver.
I think
Yeah,
it was Revolver.
I think it's
Revolver's
Revolver.
great,
But
I think it was Revolver.
but I mean,
It time proved, I think,
Right.
what it was.
right.
And he, I think he really at that point had already made the decision. Like he was already on his own trip. Like
Right.
he had stopped touring. He
Literally
didn't-
on his own. Shit.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
literally. He was no longer touring with them, and so there was already kind of a rift. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so this was kind of the last hurrah, I think, of Brian Wilson before he literally succumbed to you know, his desire to keep wanting to one-up himself and the Beatles. And
Right.
The Smile story is, people may not or may know it, but he literally went crazy.
Right.
Right.
Like,